Hello and welcomes everyone, and Wolf here, and as you can no doubt tell from the title of the video or the background image I'm using, we are once again starting an introduction part to a new series of Star Wars The Old Republic. This is a game I have played many times for the channel and enjoyed myself in doing so, bringing you the various story origin arcs and exploring the different ways you may want to play one of the characters here in Star Wars The Old Republic. As mentioned, this will be another introduction character creation video, the first part of a new series, and so we're going to be going through very similar tropes that you may have watched prior. But you're more than welcome to stick around. We are going to be going through some of the background of the game and some of the lore where we find ourselves in the Star Wars universe. And then we'll get ourselves into character creation and some of the background for the character, why we're going to be playing the character the way we are. So, if you want to see some actual gameplay, if you just want to see me cutting up people with a lightsaber, or a training saber I suppose, you're more than welcome to jump ahead to part 2 once we get through the UI explanation. Otherwise, feel free to stick around, get yourself comfortable, make yourself a drink, and we'll get into a bit of the background, into the lore, and we'll take things from there. I would recommend actually sticking around though, as this of course is a replay of the Jedi Knight series, and things are going to be going a little bit differently than usual, or from what you may have seen from myself before. So, get yourselves comfortable, I'll see you in just a second. Okay, good, you're back? Perfect. So, let's get ourselves underway. We'll get through some of the background of the game first, for those of you who may not be aware. This is a game, an MMORG, released by BioWare, well, developed by BioWare, published by EA, and it came out December 2011. It is a game that I've been around for since the beginning, and I've been playing it obviously on and off then for about over 10 years now. And yet, I've still yet to do quite a bit of the kind of what I'd call endgame content. But that's just me. This is a game set in the Star Wars universe. Naturally, it has the name. But not the Star Wars universe that most people would be familiar with. This series, this saga, is set 35, or well, approximately 3,500 years prior to the events of the movies that most people are familiar with. And not only that, BioWare, I suppose you could call this the third in an installment, as BioWare did have 2 previous titles, Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, and those games are set approximately 300 years prior to the events we find ourselves in. The events, or the events I'm talking about that we find our character in, is a rather turbulent time. To kind of wax poetic on the whole situation, the Galactic Republic, which has been a stable force, a stable factor within the known galaxy for many thousands of years, has recently become under threat by the resurgent and reapparent Sith Empire, a rather militaristic and aggressive faction which just came in from the unknown regions and from the seat of the Empire regions north of the known galaxy, and basically began, I believe it was a 28-year-old war against the Republic and the various neutral worlds of the galaxy. And they did extremely well. The Sith were battling against obviously the Republic military and the Jedi, pushing them back, even going so far as sacking the Republic's capital world of Coruscant. The war was going heavily in the Empire's favour, and yet for some reason they decided to agree to a peace treaty on Alderaan. This treaty, known as the Treaty of Coruscant, basically allowed the Empire to lay claim a lot of the worlds they had conquered from the Republic and the various neutral worlds during their invasion. And so, 10 years have passed since the Treaty of Coruscant was signed, and tensions are still extremely high. Republic and Imperial agents, diplomats from both sides, are trying to visit various opposing worlds, and through kind of legitimate and rather illegitimate means, trying to persuade the local governments from one side or the other, fomenting unrest and civil war. The Republic, with the sacking of Coruscant, no, I should say, the Jedi, from the sacking of Coruscant, actually lost a great many of their members, their numbers. Not only from a 28-year-old war fighting against the Empire itself, but the Jedi Temple on Coruscant was destroyed, left in a smoking ruin, thanks to the Sith invasion of their capital world. And the Jedi have since, for the most part, withdrawn from Republic kind of major events. They've pulled themselves back to a rediscovered homeworld of the Jedi Order known as Tython, where they are slowly kind of retraining and recruiting new members, even kind of allowing a bit more flexibility on who they may recruit. Normally, the Jedi Order like to recruit the newest members of their order at a very young age, and thanks to the sudden drop in numbers due to the war, they've kind of been somewhat flexible in that regard, and that's where we find our character. But we'll talk more about that when we actually get through into character creation and creating our character themselves. So, that's sort of the background. We'll talk more about the character and their desires as we get into the game itself. But this is going to be what I hopefully consider a long Let's Play, where we're not only going to be doing the main class storyline and following the events that transpire in the BioWare told story of the Jedi Knight, but in addition, we're also going to be looking at the various world quests, the various side and exploration missions. Give us a reason, give us more depth into the situation we find ourselves on the various worlds we are visiting. In addition, we'll probably be looking to do a variety of flashpoints, which are the equivalent of dungeons in other, let me get this right, in other MMOs like World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. In addition, yes, why not? In this series, when we're visiting various worlds, I've made a sudden decision, kind of on the spot, so to speak, as I'm recording this first part. I will actually make use of the wonders of Google or some other search engine to look into how to get some of the various datacrons on the various worlds we visit. So if you're interested in getting some, not all of the datacrons, some of which I've already picked up, but if you're interested in how to retrieve certain datacrons, we could actually look into that in this series as well. I'll be using the use of Google, not just trying to guess my way into some of them, as there's quite a few which I haven't discovered. But yeah, we'll do that in this series, why the hell not? Also, it'll pad the time, just a little bit. Either way though, we'll get ourselves over to character creation, and we'll talk about how we're building our character and what motivates our character going forward into the storyline. And hopefully, those motivations will very kindly mesh into the options we gain as a Jedi Knight. As, of course, even though there is a bit of flexibility with the storyline, you do tend to go down the same road regardless, so it's only really your choices, your dialogue that can vary at times. Either way, I'll see you in character creation in just a moment. And welcomes back, everyone. Okay, we'll get ourselves over and into character creation, where we'll actually get designing our character, and we'll also talk about the background of our Jedi Knight as well. Hask. We'll get around to you eventually. Okay, a few things before we begin. for those of you who wish to be made aware, we are playing on the Darth Malgus EU server. And even though they've changed the symbols here, the icons, we have of course completed all 8 of the playable classes previously, which has created us the status of Legendary. It gives you a little bit of status around your icon in-game, if you so wish it. I think it also gives you a title. Not that I really play around with it, but may as well make it a mention. And yes, we... I'm not going to go into a certain reason why all of the playable classes that I have, or created characters here, are all Imperial. I haven't set that up purposefully for some form of symbolism, not at all. But we'll get into creating our character. So, please ignore not only the symbolism here, but the Onslaught and Legacy of the Sith tooltips here. We do have a level booster to start at level 70, but no, we're going to be starting back at level 1. At the beginning, after the 10-year, or during the 10-year ceasefire between the Republic and the Empire. Join the fight for the galaxy as you side with the Galactic Republic or Sith Empire to embark on one of the 8 exciting origin stories. You will be creating a level 1 character. Indeed we will. Something I want to briefly talk about before we actually get into creating our character, customizing them as it is. I'm not a fan of the new customization, the new character creation system. They've given you more options for your various combat styles, which varies things up, makes things a bit better, I suppose, for those who may not be a subscriber, giving you a bit more availability. But they simplified it. They've taken away some of the tooltips, some of the background. For example, here in choosing your allegiance, you would choose between joining as a member of the Galactic Republic, which is what we will be doing, and the Sith Empire. But even there would be a small tooltip above, or that used to appear above us, giving us an idea about what the Galactic Republic was all about, or the Empire. And when you were choosing your origin, your class, they would also be giving you an idea of how your class works into that particular faction, how a trooper maybe want to be played within the Republic, and how they may work alongside the Jedi, or playing as an Imperial agent with the Empire, for instance, how they fit into the Sith hierarchy, not being Force-sensitive themselves. These things are very interesting and can give you ideas of how to play your character, if you so choose that. But I always found it interesting, and they've minimalized it quite a bit, which I find always a shame. I always like having more depth, more detail. But from experience, I will give you a kind of a brief background into the 2 major factions, and we'll be talking about how our character's background and how they may wish to be played. Either way, we'll start with the Galactic Republic. This is a major faction which was founded, I believe, 20,000 years ago. I believe that's the length of time anyway. Founded by various species, various planets, and various corporations, all for the collective greater good of the known galaxy. As they expanded, they added more worlds to their basic vast democracy. They are led by a Supreme Chancellor. I love the idea of democracy. I try not to go Palpatine on you all again, as I tend to do in this situation. I do like the idea of democracy, but there's a lot of red tape involved, and there's a lot of corruption within the Galactic Republic, even now, never mind in 3,500 years when the Republic falls. The issue is, there is a lot of money involved, there's a lot of resources involved, and those who have the resources could maybe sway various senators of different planets, various corporations lobbying for their own greed, good. And so the people who have the influence could perhaps divert that money, divert those resources to their needs, their people. And the people who may be actually in need, especially after the Great Galactic War, maybe aren't going to benefit because they're a lesser voice in the crowd in the Senate Tower on Coruscant, which is kind of a shame. There's a lot of red tape involved, as I say, in the Republic, and it's only when there's a greater threat like the Sith Empire where, funnily enough, executive action is required. More power has to be given to the Supreme Chancellor to then coordinate the Republic military and even the Jedi. So democracy's all well and good until military action's needed, and that's kind of what it can expose, unfortunately. The opposite, of course, is the Sith Empire, the other major faction now within the known galaxy. Highly aggressive, highly militaristic, has a very strict hierarchy. Not only in terms of whether or not you are Force sensitive, but also whether or not you are human or pure-blooded Sith, or whether or not you are of one of the lesser species. The Empire does not look upon any species that is not pure-blooded Sith or human, which is the vast majority of those who came from Dromund Kaas, or various exiles who came potentially from the Republic many thousands of years ago. Now, the Empire is ruled by the all-powerful and immortal Sith Emperor. Even during the Great War, it is known that the Emperor was more distant than he had been previously. And so it was kind of a surprise, and even some of the Sith Lords highly disagreed, even though they may not confront the Emperor about it directly, that a peace treaty be signed. The Empire were pretty sure of their victory, that they could force the Republic to capitulate and to surrender. But the Emperor agreed to the signing of the Treaty of Coruscant, and since then has kind of withdrawn himself. Since then, the major day-to-day operations are led by, I believe it's the 12 most powerful Dark Lords of the Sith. This group is known as the Dark Council, and each of them has a sphere of influence that kind of they deal with in terms of their interests. And not only them, but then it's almost like a pyramid scheme with them at the top, and then their apprentices, their minions, their acolytes, and the various other Imperial foundations like the Imperial Army, Imperial Intelligence will fall under different spheres of influence, therefore fall under the jurisdiction of one of those Lords of the Sith. The hierarchy under them is very flexible. Those of you who have ambition within the Empire and have the influence, the backing, or the Force power to back it up, may find yourself going far. Even those without Force powers may find themselves in a rather privileged position within the Empire if they have the ambition to seek it. Of course, if they screw up, failure is not tolerated within the Empire. And so if you screw up, if you aren't removed by those above you in power, it may be seen as a sign of weakness, and your rivals may remove you instead to take your position. Now, similar to the Jedi, the Sith did lose quite a few members of its order, and therefore have amended some of their rigid acceptance into the Sith Academy on Korriban. Now, various slaves, even human slaves, but lesser alien species as well, are being accepted within the hierarchy of the Sith if they pass the rather rigid tests and trials on Korriban. Therefore, an alien with Force sensitivity could actually make it far, even though they may be looked down upon by their colleagues. But yes, we will be joining the Galactic Republic and seeing where things go. So, we now get to choose our origin story, whether or not we play as a Jedi Knight, Consular, Smuggler, or Trooper. Of course, this is going to be a replay of the Jedi Knight series, so of course we'll stick with a Jedi Knight origin story. And previously, a Jedi Knight would have a choice of 2 advanced combat styles, the Guardian or the Sentinel. With the Legacy of the Sith expansion, they've actually give you, as I say, more agency, more choice. You can now choose any of the 8 force-wielding styles, either your counterpart from the Sith Empire, you can be a Juggernaut or a Marauder, or you can even choose the combat styles of the Jedi Consular, the Sage and Shadow, or the Assassin and Sorcerer. Now, for this playthrough, we're actually going to be revisiting the Sentinel combat style. In fact, when we get to customizing our character, they are going to look very similar to a previous Jedi Knight I have played. That is on purpose, because we never got very far with that particular series. In fact, we only got to the end of the main story arc, and I'm hoping, all things going well, we can take this Jedi Knight into the expansions, and I just do like the look. But the Jedi Knight here, a valiant defender of the Republic, champions of peace and symbols of hope in dark times, Jedi Knights stand for the legacy of the Jedi Order. And of course, as a Sentinel, control and focus are the hallmarks of the Sentinel. Through years of training, the Sentinel learns the art of using 2 lightsabers simultaneously to create an intricate web of damage that is almost impossible to evade. And we have 3 disciplines under the Sentinel: the Watchman, Combat, and Concentration. And it kind of gives you an idea of what they deal. Watchman is more determined about dealing damage over time. Combat is direct burst damage and has some ranged capabilities. And finally, Concentration is a mixture of the 2. So, we are going to be playing as a female Jedi Knight. And now we get to actually choose our species. We get to customize our character. So, forgive me, I'm actually going to choose the look of my character first. We're going to be playing as a Togruta once again. And actually, it does have some bearing, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. I'm just going to choose how our Togruta is going to look. Yep, that's the one I want. That is the correct facial pattern. Oh, perfect. And last but not least, perfect! Hey! Here is our Togruta here. And so, the last thing we need to do is to give our character a name. This Togruta, her name is going to be Aeva. It's going to be Aeva Var. Now, I'm going to give you a bit of background about Aeva Var before we talk about how we may want to play her, because it's going to imply some things as well. Aeva here comes from, I wouldn't want to say a noble family, but a highly well-respected and very wealthy family on Sheely, the Togrutan homeworld. The homeworld of the Togruta, I don't believe, came under assault during the Great War between the Republic and the Empire, but a lot of, obviously, Togrutan species did probably join the Republic military to fight back against the Empire. Her family, of course, stayed more on the sidelines. Her father, in fact, was the former senator for Sheely with the Galactic Senate, with the Republic Senate, I should say. And so he, and including his wife, of course, knew a great deal about not only what was going on in the Great War, but also had dealings with not only the Senate, but with the Jedi, who were trying to advise the Senate in how to deal with the Empire, how to push them back, and how the Jedi were leading some of the Republic military forces. Now, this was when Aeva was born, during the Great War. She is still rather young, probably in maybe like just early adulthood now, and during her adolescence it was discovered she was Force sensitive, and her family knew what the Jedi do. The Jedi do take children who are discovered to have Force potential and take them away from their parents. They basically have, or Jedi are meant to have, no attachments to their family. And her family did not want that for her. In fact, her family probably wanted her to follow them in some diplomatic form of her future. Maybe even to follow in her father's footsteps. Unfortunately, that wasn't to be. Her father fell out of favour. Whether or not that was due to some of the corruption within the Senate, I don't want to say. Maybe we could pursue that later. But Aeva's family fell into kind of ill repute, probably due to certain allegations which may or may not have actually been true. And she herself saw some of the corruption, the weakness that the Republic has within its Senate. How this greater good necessarily didn't mean the greater good for everyone. And it was during her teenage years that she was discovered by a Jedi Master to have Force potential. And due to her family's lack or loss of power, they had little choice but to kind of accept that she would be going away to the Jedi Temple, to this new training ground, this new homeworld of Tython. And so she was older than expected to be accepted within the Jedi Order. But, as we mentioned, numbers had dwindled, and so she was accepted by the Jedi Council, by the Jedi Order at the time. And even though she already had some preconceived notions, because of her background, because of her upbringing with her family, she was discovered to have vast potential, and in fact she has extremely high, or according to her assessors, very promising combat skills. Unfortunately, they've also mentioned how hard-headed she is, how emotional she still is, that she has a lot of ways to go before her final trials should actually be performed. Of course, that was her assessor's impression. It has since then, those reports have since went on, and the Jedi Council, or at least some members of the Jedi Council, have asked for her to be fast-tracked to undergo her final trials, which is where we find ourselves with Aeva Var. She is, I would be generous to call her maybe a maverick of the Jedi Order. She is still in attune to her emotions, and she still allows them to influence her actions. She feels like she should act, that yes, she agrees that the strong should protect the weak, that the Jedi Order should help those who are in need. But unfortunately, does it not make sense that one should then be strong first, to then help the weak? If you're not strong, then you're just going to get trampled and you can't help anyone. And so she has that, I would call it almost like a chip on her shoulder, that mindset. And so that may affect some of the choices she makes. And she may not agree with some of the major tenets that are currently within the Jedi Order. But I thought I'd mention that as a way that we are going to be pursuing Aeva's character here. I hope you don't mind the monologue. I hope it gives you some explanation and gives you a bit of background into her character, which I've just somewhat made up. But yes, I had a thought about it, and I thought that's what we would go with. And so we'll get ourselves down to the prologue world of Tython to undergo our final trials. So, let's get ourselves underway. Unfortunately, they have removed the opening scroll movie, so I can no longer bless you all with the opening of of Spaceballs. But I will, at the beginning of part 2 of this series, start as we load into the character, which gives you a bit of a background screen which you can pause and read, which gives you an idea of what the character is meant to be doing at this point in time, as well as we'll be looking at the various mission logs, which give you a bit more depth about our situation. But either way, let's take a shuttle down to Tython, and, as I say, undergo our final trials, see what the situation is.
Welcome to Tython, Padawan. Everyone at the temple is looking forward to meeting you. Your former masters praise your combat skills. They say you're becoming an expert duelist.
I've never fought anyone I couldn't beat, including my masters.
Impressive claim. If you're seeking fresh challenges, you'll find them. The Jedi Council will assign you a new master to oversee your final trials. You'll be tested in ways you can't imagine. But when you leave Tython, you'll know what it means to be a Jedi Knight. More importantly, you'll know yourself.
I didn't come here to meditate and learn boring lessons.
These final trials will test your limits. Boredom is the least of your worries. There's a speeder here that will take you to... Hang on. Getting an emergency signal. Flesh Raiders, armed with blasters? He must be mistaken.
You can hear the blaster fire. Go help!
Calm down, Padawan. Never rush into a fight before knowing your enemy. Flesh Raiders are a species of hostile natives. They're smart enough to use tools and violent beyond reason. I'm sending every able-bodied Jedi down to the Padawan training grounds right away. Especially you.
You planning to stay up here and watch?
I'm warning the others. I'll be right behind you. Take the speeder outside to the training grounds, push back the Flesh Raiders, and find out if they're really using advanced weapons. Go. I'll catch up with you after I alert the Jedi Council. May the Force be with you.
Okay, and welcome to the game itself, everyone. So, welcome to Tython, the rediscovered, or potential rediscovered homeworld of the Jedi Order. Discovered by the Grand Master of the Order, Satil Shan, 2 years after the Treaty of Coruscant was signed. As you notice, this is not the typical garb of the starting Jedi Knight. We'll talk about adaptive armor and various outfits you may wish to wear, as well as the rather shiny blades she has at her disposal and the reason we have those. But, as I say, we'll take a break here. We're just getting through the introduction and character creation. When we come back at the beginning of part 2, we will very briefly go into some of the various UI elements. Windows we're going to be opening and closing quite frequently. And then we'll get ourselves down to the Knolls, where that emergency signal came from. Seemingly some hostile natives, these Flesh Raiders, are attacking Padawans in that region. So we'll see what that's all about, and if they are indeed using advanced weaponry like blaster rifles. Until then, though, thank you all for joining me for this first part here in a new series of Star Wars The Old Republic, and hopefully I'll see you for even more next time. Until then, though, take care. Bye-bye now.